And welcome back to the first episode of the Challenge 40 finale here on the New Generation Challenge podcast. We are your hosts. My name is Brett Parnell.
And I'm Titi Fernandez.
And we're back after a while. I, as you can tell, has been getting over being sick for a couple of weeks. Um, sorry we missed an episode, but we're back here talking about the final. Um, TT, first of all, before we get into the final, do you have any thoughts about that last episode that just comes to mind? Specifically the Kara versus Tori elimination that I think we were all waiting for at some point in the show's history.
Yeah, I mean, it was a really crazy episode. The way that Michele came from behind and was able to get that win, or not last place, I guess,
Yeah.
without losing, it's really crazy. Um, it was crazy to see how Tori, like, and she even talked about it. She wasn't really trying her best, and you would think, like, maybe after seeing how well the other girls were doing, she would have like kicked it up a step. Um, and they ended up having to go into elimination. But something I did find interesting, and I'm sure that you saw that too, but the puzzle that Jenny had,
Yeah.
how it was wrong. I'm
Yep.
sure it was like human error or whatever, but
Essentially, the bottom and the top piece for the audience who hasn't seen it were the exact same color. And on Jenny's puzzle, she put the bottom in the top and the top in the bottom.
and
The paint didn't line
what
up.
I think made this really interesting was that Kara probably would have won this challenge
Yeah.
if they would have caught that, because if they were to tell Jenny like, "Hey, this is wrong," she probably wouldn't be able to recognize what was wrong and have to take the whole thing apart and that would probably take more than 3 minutes as
Yeah,
penalty.
that's a really good point. Um,
So,
I mean, there are more than like 25 colors out there. I don't know why they're not painting every piece a different color. Kind
mhm.
of a mess up on production's point. It's too bad for Kara in the case that she would have won. Had Jenny won this challenge still, I don't think it would have made a huge difference
No, it wouldn't have, yeah.
because if Kara being in second, if she goes in elimination against Tori, that's what happened and she didn't win. If Tori happened to, in an alternative world, beat Michele, I mean, Michele in the water against Kara in the water would probably not be a close challenge.
Mhm.
So I don't think it was that as influential as some people online think, but production needs to do better, especially on a final 5 episode of the biggest
Mhm.
season ever. Like, how come we can't just paint everything a different color?
Yeah, or make sure, like, because if the audience was able to point just from a small clip of it, see exactly what was wrong with it, I think that maybe they need to have somebody, like, double checking things and not just have one person say, "Yes, that's it," or,
Yeah.
even just checking it as they're going, obviously not telling them if they got it wrong or not, but if you're seeing that the bottom piece is not aligning with it, then I think that they should have done better in that
Been able
situation.
to like tell TJ through an earpiece, Jenny's wrong on the bottom if she doesn't change it.
She's wrong, exactly.
And then he'll notice, say right away, Jenny, check. TJ, no, that's not right, without
Yeah.
having to really look. Yeah, you're right.
I think this season had a few, like, same with the Derek and Horacio elimination, a few, I guess, hiccups. I mean, at that elimination, we did learn that Derek did win fair and square, and it was Horacio not, listening to, I guess, the rules of it and
Yeah.
everything. But I think that hopefully moving forward from this season, that they're gonna have more, I guess, referees, if you would say, that are to accurately check everything, so we don't have situations like this.
Yeah, absolutely.
It comes down purely to the competition.
Very true. All right, so moving into the final, we see after Tori wins a very long treading water contest against Cara Maria, that the players are out on what we find out is called the Sinister, a really old Filipino fishing vessel, and that is now their home for at least the first part of the final, probably the second part, but we'll see what goes on there. So at this point, they're not in these luxury conditions that we've seen, whether it be in the beginning of this episode or the last episode in the Philippines, or what I guess the internet seemed to indicate wasn't the case, but that ended up to be the case in Vietnam.
Yeah, and one thing I do wanna talk about, because I have seen a lot of people online saying that it's unfair that Tori had to go into the final right after going into elimination, but to me, it's also like that's just part of the game.
Yeah,
Whether it was gonna be, I remember at the beginning of the season where they flipped a coin whether it was gonna be a girls' day or a boys' day or whatever. Um, and it's just that's just how it is another like motivator to do good in the last daily,
yeah, very true.
because you either have to go into elimination, get sent home, or you're gonna have to compete in an elimination, and we never know what that is gonna be, and it could affect your potential, like your energy levels in the final. So I think while it's not ideal, I don't think that it's an unfair thing, and I think it's just how the game is and how it's part of the game in a way.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. I don't think it's unfair at all. I also don't think just based on the conditions and the fact that the other competitors are sitting on a boat watching them, it's not like they're in. It's not like it's a something that they go off to and say, like I'm thinking back to Fresh Meat 2, where everybody stayed at the house during elimination.
Mhm.
It's not it's the fact that the other competitors are still out on that old boat just sitting watching the treading water take place. I don't think it's a huge disadvantage for Tori in that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess she's probably a little bit like, see, when you're in the water, you're, like, exerting muscular
Yeah,
or whatever, but it's not like they were in a bed taking it
yeah,
while it was happening.
uh,
We see Jen kind of get that, and this will go on to her as well, but about the options, she's saying that she doesn't understand why they're sleeping on the floor without a blanket if the final hasn't started. And I found this really annoying because Jenny, you've won a final before.
yeah.
The final has started. Everybody there is already in the final, and
Once
just be
everybody,
thankful that they got a meal. Did you see they were eating food? Like,
yeah,
I don't know.
absolutely. Once everybody is in the final, then the final's pretty much started
100%.
at any point.
And even with, like, you can even say it started before for the men because we saw that Derek had a penalty.
Yep,
So after past the final elimination, you know the final has begun in a way.
very true.
After he's complaining, Jordan starts to get up or get fed up with Jenny, and we see this again later on. But he says something like, "You can want in one hand and shit in the other and see which one fills up faster," which I thought was pretty funny. And
Yeah,
it
that was
just goes
funny.
to show. And Jordan had talked about this earlier on, but he's like, I am tired of living with these people. I'm like, he's ready to get into the final and do his thing. So I
Yeah,
thought that was pretty funny.
which is the player's own fault for letting him get there so easily. But
Exactly.
we'll talk about Jordan in the final very soon because it was
Absolutely.
sort of fun to watch, but also sort of not fun to watch. But no, that's makes a lot of sense. Um, I mean, what is it with Jordan though? Always seeing everybody else complaining, and he's just like built for this and doesn't care.
And remember in past seasons, Jordan would complain about people not washing their dishes. And
Yeah,
you could just tell that Jordan grew up in he's from Oklahoma, I think. And he just grew up in a family, I guess, where he had certain standards and rules for himself, and I think it's funny to see him be living in a house for so long with other people that weren't built like this, and see his reactions to that. That was pretty funny.
yeah. When you look at the other players in the game, there's a big difference between growing up in a more traditional lifestyle in Oklahoma versus Florida, New Jersey, England.
Yeah, and we can even see with Jordan the way that he was raised, and I remember hearing about this in his Real World season 2, but he just has this kind of attitude of not, I mean, he has very strong beliefs. He does complain about things and he does call out things that he doesn't agree with,
Yeah,
but his background and his morals are very traditional, like you said, and it's funny to see how he, um, like how his reactions to people not thinking the same way as him.
yeah, absolutely. I do remember you saying that his season was one of the few real world seasons I actually watched. So That definitely comes back. So starting the final, do you want to explain what you saw about the karma points twist? Because my TV cut out at this point, so I didn't actually watch it for about 3 minutes.
Yeah. Um, so the players kind of get put on the sinister, and TJ is saying like, this is sinister, this is where you're gonna start and finish each point. So it's just the starting line and the it's that the finals are gonna be different checkpoints, and like we said, they're just gonna start there and come back, and then based off their placement, they're gonna get a token, which is just gonna be like, I guess, the place that they got in that checkpoint. Um And first place we hear is going to get $400,000 each. Second place is going to get 75,000, which is a very good price, I think. Third place gets 25K and fourth place gets nothing. And then TJ kind of talks about the karma vote, and he says that the winner of this season is going to be determined by a combination of the karma votes and the scores on the checkpoint. And we don't really, he says that we're not going to know what it is until the end, like where the points stand with the karma votes. And I do wonder how much weight the karma vote is going to carry in this. Because if you think about it, if I gave a karma vote of 1 to somebody and gave them a 5, is that going to bump them up 4 points ahead of me
Yeah,
just because of a singular person's karma vote? So I don't know. I really hope it does not change the outcome of the final, because I am not a big fan of this twist as much as I do like seeing new things come on. Um, I think that popularity contest, I guess, is more of a Survivor, Big Brother type of
yeah,
thing. And one of the reasons I really like the challenge is because even though you can get voted into elimination, it's all up to you and your chance to for your way out of it.
right.
Um, and it also just kind of gives a disadvantage to the people that had to go into elimination a lot, because I'm sure that if somebody sends me home, I'm not going to be very happy with them. Um, but like somebody like Michelle who had to go in 3 times, sure, Tina is not very happy about her being
Yeah.
there. Or I think a lot of people want the OGs to win, and we
Olivia better
saw,
have given her a 5. I'm just gonna say
I think she
that.
did. We had a little shot of um people talking about what they're gonna give you, like everybody, and Olivia said she wants Michelle to have a advantage over everybody else. So I'm guessing that
Nice.
means that she gave Michelle the highest score and no other high score like that.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I hope it doesn't make a big difference in the final. I get the sense, and I know we saw online this weekend, I think it was Rachel who said they probably won't do this again. So that gives me a couple of thoughts of why they won't do it again. One is that maybe it does make a difference in the final, and they know people are going to hate it. The other is, and this goes back to my kind of original thought of when I first heard about the karma votes during the first episode of the season, is I'm like, and maybe that's just, I know you and I have a similar interest. It's not the challenge, but I'm like, this is just Battle of the Eras trying to have another Taylor Swift reference in the show.
Hmm.
And I honestly think that's where this whole concept of the karma vote came from. And I really hope it doesn't give somebody 325 extra $1,000 and the title of being a challenge champion.
Or I really hope it also doesn't, because imagine if you scored, I guess, second place or even third
Yeah,
place, and you get either down to getting $1,000 less to third place or losing $75,000, period.
yeah,
That's something I would be very upset about,
absolutely.
if that were me at least.
Can't agree more.
But moving on from that, the first checkpoint we see is called Sandblast. The players must swim to shore and retrieve puzzles one at a time, and then they have to solve a 3D puzzle on the shore and then swim back to the to collect their token.
Yeah, this was really fun to watch. It almost gave me vibes of like the Edge of Extinction challenges that Survivor 40 did, with players just routinely going up and down the beach time after time after time in order to get one piece of the puzzle at a time.
I
While
remember that,
also,
yes.
well, also in addition to just, unlike Survivor, it wasn't just a running challenge. they also added in both a puzzle component and a swimming component. And we see for specifically on the women's side that that really is the great equalizer, where who would have thought from what we've seen her say about herself before that the challenge with the furthest running of the show would see Michele come first place, but she's able to use her puzzle skills and her swimming skills to come from behind and beat Jenny.
Yeah, and even at the start of this, we see kind of a drone shot of the swimming, and we see Jordan, Jenny, and Michelle are way ahead of everybody
Yeah,
else. And I'll talk about this more later, but we see that the women are killing it in the
yeah.
final. Like, who would have thought that Michelle is going to be beating all of the men and going to be right next to Jordan? Like, and I'm not saying this is a bad thing about her, but I'm
No,
saying obviously men are like stronger than women.
generally.
They have bigger muscles, they have better build for athletic things, and it's just so nice to see that she is just absolutely killing it. Same with Jenny. Um, I honestly did not think Jenny was gonna do this well at the start of this because of her asthma.
Especially when she
Um,
says she hasn't been swimming since the season she won.
exactly.
I'm like,
So
whoa.
I don't know. It's just built different. I
We'll see if Jenny keeps up this level of competition or if she eventually collapses in day two.
Yeah. We saw
Because
Derek.
now they've been
Oh,
swimming
sorry.
all day and staying up all night, as we'll get to.
I saw Derek. He obviously had his penalty from getting last on the last daily. But he was able to make up a ton of ground during the run. And
Yeah,
I've just this season, Derek has absolutely like shocked me, and he is truly such a good competitor, and you would have never thought that based off his flagship seasons. I guess on Battle of the Seasons, when he was with John A, they were pretty well, but so, like every that he did after that, he always went host. So I'm really like surprised and happy with his performance in this.
yeah, absolutely. Um, we do see that disadvantage that really doesn't hurt Derek very much. He still does great at the running, and also I thought it was hilarious just to see Derek on the boat, and then he's like, "Oh, I'll be fine with my disadvantage because Kyland is sitting doggy paddling in the middle of the Pacific Ocean."
Yeah,
And it's
I'm
like
really
all
happy.
season we've seen. I think most of us thought if anybody was going to beat Jordan, it was going to be Kyland. And now that we're finding out it's a swimming challenge, boom, Derek is the one to watch against Jordan and Bananas instead of Kyland.
And I think this is also because Derek had such a good political game
Yeah,
that he didn't
true.
really he we saw him go into elimination and absolutely crush it. So there's that, but he didn't really have to show like he was almost kind of hiding in the shadows of his competitive abilities. And when it was time for him to step up to the plate and perform, he was able to do so.
Mm,
And yeah, I think he's one of him and Michelle are truly like the underdogs of this final. And I'm just rooting for both of them.
yeah, absolutely. Same as me. I like that point that you bring up that you say Derek had a really good political game. It'll be interesting to see what his karma scores are
Absolutely.
because I think Derek may really is the one who, even if he doesn't get top scores from everybody, he'll probably get top scores from like his close allies, people like Olivia, people like Avery. But even if he doesn't, I don't think he's going to get really any ones.
Yeah, I don't think anybody really disliked him.
Yeah.
He didn't
Whereas
really have any enemies or
everybody else in
anything.
this final will probably find somebody that they get a one from.
Oh,
Other
absolutely.
than the fact that Loyal gave Michelle a two. Just going to point that out.
I just love how she gave her but bananas a 1.
That was amazing.
Um, so like we talked about, Jordan absolutely blew everybody out of the water. Got first. Michelle able to catch the swimming portion after a small setback during portion in the running. And Michelle and Jordan were pulling out the first win. We saw Jenny and Derek come in second place, Tori and Bananas in third, Kyland and Rachel in last. And Bananas does talk about how he knows how finals are. He knows that this is not that it's going to be a very long process. So he talks about how he was almost pacing himself
Yeah,
in
which is
this.
smart.
See, I don't know because I think it'd be different if it was a final where it's just first to the finish line.
That's true.
Because then that you can truly show like the endurance. But since this is final, I don't it's as much of an advantage as he thinks it is,
Yeah,
especially
you
when you
make a
have
really
someone
good
like Jordan
point.
there.
Very true. I never thought of that.
Yeah, so we'll have to see if it truly helps him to pace himself because obviously Jordan, he has a lot of gas in the tank. So it's not like you're
What
gonna tire
can't
him out
Jordan do in a final?
or just in life, period.
Yeah. I mean, the only things that really give Jordan a hard time is being a partner with Anissa.
Yeah, and even then he made the final, so
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Do you have anything else from this checkpoint or do you want to move on to the
No, let's move on
second?
to number two.
The second checkpoint is called Ghost Ship. The players must ghost ship and dive under an abandoned boat and memorize goals. And then they have to climb back on board and recreate the puzzle on their station and then swim back to collect their token.
Yeah, this was very fun to watch. Um, it kind of surprised me in terms of the results, and we'll get into that in a second, but this brought me almost back, other than the one difference in it, that the answer key was underwater, to a challenge that Michele just dominated in Survivor 32, only
Mm.
making it on or doing the whole challenge in one attempt, when you can tell that watching it that Jeff is expecting the players to have to go out to the answer key 5 and 6 times.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't even think about that when I was watching it, but now that you mention it, it does remind me of that as well.
But it is, like most things in the challenge compared to other shows that people have been on, Survivor, Big Brother, Amazing Race, much more difficult, and they'll add extra levels of complexity. In this case, you're physically getting the answer key under a boat. You're not just swimming out to it. And
Mhm.
that's much more difficult to see, probably, I imagine, wearing a pair of dollar store swimming goggles that are leaking water at all hours of the day. That would be a great question to ask any of the players that have been there. Of is there any of their swimming equipment actually decent or a piece of junk? But
Yeah, that is
um,
pretty funny.
the fact that they had to get this answer key underwater would have made it extremely challenging,
Mhm.
especially on the one that Michele has a challenge on, where it's those two symbols were next to identical if you're trying to look at everything fast.
And it's hard to identify where you made a mistake because if you go down and like it's hard to memorize every
Yeah.
single part of
And if
the
you're down there,
puzzle.
you're probably just trying to think in general terms, um, cannon, barrel, paddle, and not going, what if there's two barrels?
Mhm. We did see that I thought this was pretty funny, but Tori told Michelle no cheating, and Michelle said, "I'm beating you."
Yep, that was funny.
Um, and unfortunately, we
I
did
mean, it's
see
too bad that it's a men's final and a women's final, because otherwise Tori would have probably just wanted her to beat Johnny Bananas.
that's true. We did see that Michelle unfortunately got last place in this checkpoint, but we did see something pretty interesting, which was her returning to the ship and telling Derek and Kylan to look at what's inside of the barrels.
Yeah,
And it just shows how she does want these people to do well, and these are her friends, and even though like her portion doesn't like her performance doesn't affect them, she wants to help them out in any way that she can.
absolutely. And I think, kind of on that topic that I just hinted at, unlike with Tori, Michele and Tori are directly competing against each other. If Michele
Mhm.
is helping her friends Derek and Kylan, they are competing against Johnny,
Mhm.
who has made this season a living hell for her.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so we saw Jordan and Jenny coming in first. Bananas and Tori were second. Derek and Rachel were third. And like we mentioned, Michelle and Kylan, unfortunately, are in last place. But we do hear something interesting from Michelle just saying that the women are beating basically all the men except
Yeah,
for Jordan. And like we talked about, it's just interesting to see how stacked this finals cast is for the females and how well they're all performing compared to all the men.
Yeah, absolutely. This could easily be a final that they could just have players as individuals and it would work just as well.
Well, we do have Jordan there, so
Yeah. Fair.
I don't think so. Maybe without Jordan. Um,
Hey, I mean, even if Jordan was to come first and win almost $1 million for himself, he deserves it after being able to get to the final with never being put in elimination with his resume.
I really don't know how he did it because he just came off of a world championship win.
Yeah,
And I think we can say, oh, would they let Jordan or how would they put him into elimination or but I think it's also important to know nobody wants to go in an elimination.
that's it.
So it's like you voting Jordan into elimination may be a disadvantage for basically anybody else on the other cast. Because if you know that your friend is going against, more likely than not, Jordan is going to win.
Yeah. But if you send him in week after week after week, at some point there'll be something that he just doesn't do on his day.
I
We
mean,
hope.
that's the risk because they Michelle went in 3 times and she was able to win 3 times. So
Yeah.
we never know with these eliminations, but that is a good
And Jenny's
point.
gone in over and over again too, and she's in this final.
True. True.
Meanwhile, Jordan never went in at all and is just cleaning the floor with the other three guys.
That's true.
All right. Anything else before we go into checkpoint 3?
I don't have anything else.
All right. So once again, we're back in the water. 3 long swims in the same day, where players have to swim the shore, climb 1,000 steps to get to the other side of the island, and then more swimming, go out to a raft where they have a hidden image, and then use that as the answer key for the puzzle to recreate. If they do it wrong, they have to keep swimming back to the raft. Um, I don't think Olympians swim this much in one afternoon. um, but then from there we see that, interestingly enough, we get excuse me, Michele and Jenny talking about how they were really competing against each other and at the top of different alliances for most of the show. But now they're each other's hardest competition going into the end of day one on the final as the sun starts to set.
Yeah, I think this final, even obviously very swimming heavy, there's still a lot of running. There's still a lot of
Yeah.
puzzles. Like climbing 1,000 steps is not an easy thing. When the
Oh,
first had to do where they had to run, that's still a lot.
yeah.
Where somebody who's not a very good swimmer but good in the land is able to catch up, and we still see that Kyland is still falling behind.
Yeah.
Um, so I think it's interesting because it shows that especially these two girls, that even that they're good at a lot of parts of a final and not just the swimming helping them. They're doing puzzles. They're doing really good. Their skills and endurance and everything. Um, yeah, we see that Jordan kind of are ahead of everybody puzzle getting back to the but Michelle is able to closely follow behind. And again, we see Michelle is beating all the men, um, and Michelle is able to finish her, go back, join Jordan in water, but Tori gets her puzzle incorrect.
Yeah.
And this caused her to have to do the course again. I don't think they had to go up the steps again, but go back to the raft, memorize the puzzle again, and come back, which it did look like a pretty long distance.
Yeah, that certainly was a disadvantage if you missed. Just with adding another couple 100 meters to swimming to what is already probably multiple miles.
This helped Rachel kind of
Yep.
get back into the race. And she was able to get there in third place with obviously Jenny and Jordan first. We saw and Bananas were second, Derek, Rachel third, and then Kyland and Tori were in last place. We do see Kyland get a pretty bad cramp in the water,
Yeah.
and this is actually pretty dangerous
It
because if
is.
you're in open water where you obviously can't touch or sit down and you get a cramp, you can drown,
Yeah.
especially somebody who's not very strong in water. I really hope that they had TJ in a scuba suit or somebody else helping him out.
Yeah, I would imagine, just based on what I've heard about multiple of these water challenges, that they have a couple of rescue divers underneath the challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, this checkpoint, it was pretty interesting. If you look at the puzzle key, it looked
I
that
know I've done
difficult.
the basics, but that's something that I always want to do, is do a rescue diver certification.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd want to do that. But the puzzle, if you looked at the key, it didn't look that difficult, but when I saw them moving the puzzle pieces, they were all like, how many sides is that? Six-sided?
Yeah,
So that's probably something difficult, and you have to be really, really careful with this because you don't want to get this wrong.
absolutely.
Do you have anything else from this checkpoint?
Um, Not really. We see Jordan wins again. So Jordan is now 3 for 3. I mean, I'm getting to think that unless there's an elimination in the final at some point, Jordan has pretty much won the show. It just doesn't look like anybody else on the guy's side is going to be able to catch him. Um,
Yeah,
this
absolutely.
this one, Jenny gets her second win, but Michele comes second. So Michelle's not out of this by any means just yet.
Yeah,
Even though Jenny has 2 wins and Michele has one,
and
Michelle has a first, a second, and a fourth.
we don't see of the fourth checkpoint that we're about to talk, but in rankings of the Michelle is in second place right now,
Yeah,
and the other girls are behind from her.
absolutely.
But moving on to the point, this one I thought was pretty funny. The players stay up all night and they have to alternate between counting thousands of coins in a foreign currency and also singing Show Me the Way to Go Home. Every 30 minutes they sing and then they go back to count and go back and sing. I thought this looked awful
Yeah.
because it's not something that's difficult per se, but it's just meant to like mentally break them and tire them out to a point where they feel like they can no longer keep going and being so exhausted having to
That's it.
count, sing this. I would feel like I'm going to if I was there.
And that is exactly what I think it was designed to do.
And then the most accurate count of the night is gonna win and so on. But I wonder how this is like I wonder if the number of coins counted is going to play a role in this. Because if somebody just goes very and very little,
Yep.
super accurately, somebody who's counting more, I don't know how that.
I think it's whoever is closest to the actual currency value of whatever's in the bag.
Okay.
So it's like my dad had an interesting suggestion here where he was like, if it was him doing it, he's like, I would just count the highest valued coins first
Mhm.
because that would at least get you closer to the win before you start spending time doing the lower valued coins.
I did listen to Michelle on the challenge official podcast that she went
I
on.
totally missed the fact that she was on that. I am going to have to
Um,
listen to it today.
yeah, and she would just get up to the closest 100, I guess,
Mm,
and stop counting there
that makes
just
sense.
so it was easier to remember where you were at. We see that Kyland is very excited about this checkpoint because we need to remember he is Kyland the calculator. And he's like, "This is something I actually can do compared to the other stuff." Derek first says he likes the singing part, and then he regrets it after a while.
That was so funny with Derek saying, when is there going to be a final checkpoint that's karaoke? And then now he's effectively got one and hates it.
Yeah, at first he was excited, and then we hear he was like, never mind what I said about that." I liked hearing Jordan in the singing portion. He was adding ad libs to the song and just kind of having trying to make the best out of an awful situation.
Yeah.
Um, I saw Jenny was barely singing in the clips. She was just kind of like, which I don't know that they would give her a penalty for not. participating that much.
I would think so. I also found it funny that me having heard this before, I'm like, Jenny is the one who is not really singing the tune slash doesn't seem to know it, yet it's a traditional British song, yet all the Americans seem to be singing louder.
See, I remember you said that you had heard this song. I thought this was a song that TJ made up or something. I did not know that it was an actual song, but
We've turned it the exact same song into a Liverpool football chant.
oh, okay.
So that's how I came across it quite a while ago.
Um, we see
Which I
Jenny,
should just
sorry.
say, it's English soccer. So I'm not going to repeat Liverpool football chants on our podcast. We might get taken off the YouTube.
We see Jenny is kind of starting to break at this point. She's complaining and complaining and complaining, and we see everybody, even Bananas and Rachel, who are her best, are getting pretty fed up with it.
Yeah.
Um,
And that would get annoying to anyone when you're in those conditions and just have to have someone complaining about them when you literally can't go anywhere else
exactly, and it's like
because that
everybody
boat is so small.
through the same thing. Everybody's fighting in there.
And it's
Um,
not even like it's Michele having a difficult time with it. It's Jenny having a difficult time with it, who's been in a final before.
and she's also like she's winning this final
Yeah.
now. She's in first place
I
as of now.
mean,
We don't know.
I'm that being said, I'm kind of lying. Michele's the only one here who hasn't been in a final before, so it's new to her. At the same time, Michele's had two experiences that are way harder than any final, so this is probably nothing for her.
She did say on that podcast that thinks that she was harder than
Pardon?
which Survivor was harder than
Yeah,
because she said that on Survivor or on the final you kind of see an end. You're like, okay,
exactly.
one more day of this. When you're on Survivor, it's like you don't want to
We'll
go
see you
home.
next month.
So, um, and I don't know, I thought it was pretty interesting and it just shows that um somebody that has had to go without eating or eating very little for 39 days twice, winning challenges after being in those conditions, sleeping on bamboo, like all of those things, and still being able to fight and really dig deep.
Yep.
And I think that just how uh, how good these people are, like how good she truly is at things like the challenge her experience really helped.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and the last thing I had from this checkpoint was Jordan getting mad at Jenny. And it's the end of the episode, and I was laughing out
It wouldn't
loud.
be a challenge final if Jordan wasn't getting angry at somebody.
Yeah, exactly. He says, "Shut up, we're all out." And then there's like an echo when he yells "stop" like multiple times. And then he says, "Then just quit, Jenny." So to me, it sounds like she was complaining the whole time.
I would imagine.
Do you have anything else from this checkpoint?
No, but I thought that would have been hilarious if she just pulled a Loyal and jumped off the Sinister.
Done here, guys. Um, but moving on to our players and losers of the week. This section is due every time, and it's just who male and females we think had the best showing of the week. Doesn't mean that they have to have won or lost or whatever. It just what we thought made kind of the player of the episode and also who is performing the best and performing in a way that we haven't necessarily expected or
Yep.
could expect, just whatever. For my male, I think this is pretty obvious, but I had Jordan
Yeah,
because he
there's
is
no arguing
dominating
it.
every single checkpoint, getting first and everything. And he
First three
doesn't even seem
times.
tired. He
Yeah,
doesn't seem tired. He's just going and going and going and just hasn't stopped and is basically to win this final unless he gets eaten by a shark.
yeah.
Something. I don't know.
First three times. Um, not bothered by anything at all other than the other players at this point. Jordan is like you say, well on his way to winning the final. And if he does win this final, I think he's well on his way to passing Bananas and CT as the best player of all time.
I think if he wins this final, he is the GOAT,
Yeah,
the greatest of all time, because having this would be his win, so
yeah,
having 5 wins and do half the seasons that CT has done, like 1/3 of the ones Banana has done. I think his challenge is done to ratio is probably high.
yeah,
That there's just no argument.
absolutely.
Um, and then for my favorite of the week, I had Michelle because we are both very big fans of her, but I
Yeah,
think a lot of people didn't expect her to do so well in this final. And
absolutely. And
um,
I put her in this position too. It's like, yes, Jenny is first, but Jenny is the exact model of competitor you would expect to be first in a final. I'm sure Tori and Rachel did not think Michelle was going to be as big of a threat to them as she's proving to be.
and if you just like look at the physique of those other girls, that they're super muscular, super bulky, like look like bodybuilders, and Michelle is more of a like she has a smaller build, and a lot of people said that she was like people I've seen on social media are were her throughout the season, and I think that her performance is just really shutting all those people up.
Absolutely.
Um and even reading through Reddit and stuff, I've seen like people have been doing polls of who they're rooting for to win the most. And it was like Michelle had like 75% of the votes, and then
Nice.
everybody else had like a tiny little bit. And then also like I saw people talking about players of the new era and like before, I guess, and I had been seeing names like Jenny, C, Amber, and then Michelle was like the next one up.
Yeah.
100% thought. Um,
Which
I
I
really
obviously really love, as I'm sure do you. Um, I know I've said this for a while. No disrespect. I know they're great friends. They're great people, both great people. But I think Michelle is winning over so many fans for the simple reason that now that she's not playing with Jay.
absolutely.
And
And
the fact that she's not playing with Jay and can play her own game, people that are solely challenge fans are seeing why people like you and I that were her fans from her original Survivor season really love her so much.
100%. And I was so glad when we found out that Jay was not on this season because even from her Ride or Dies to USU, we saw she got like almost to the end of the final
Yeah,
in that season. Um, and the only reason she basically had to go into elimination was because Chris won.
yeah.
Um, but
And
I
then
think,
she probably wins 39 if she doesn't get poached.
oh, absolutely. I've
That
seen
was
so
a
many people
final
say
just
that.
like this one that was built for Michelle's skill set.
Exactly. And I think that I really hope that the next time we see her on another season in the future, I really hope Jay's not there
Yeah.
because
But
again,
I
he
also
just,
think like even if he is, now that she's gone to the final of Battle of the Eras with all these great players, Michelle is not going to be tied as the Survivor player that used to be Jay's ex,
and I think
or
if
that
she
is
does
Jay's
another
ex, but that
season,
was close to him the whole time.
I think if she were to do another season with him, she would kind of say, like, I'm not gonna come to you, but I'm gonna play my game and I'm
Yeah.
not gonna let you drag me down to the floor and into elimination with
And
you.
she also has those relationships with people like, say, Devin, that she doesn't need to focus on working with Jay.
Yeah. I think those people would protect her against the people that are trying to couple her up with Jay in a
Exactly.
competitive sense. For my loser of the week, the male, I had Kyland because coming into this final, obviously we know he wasn't the strongest swimmer, but we didn't really see him like drowning per se at the other challenges.
Okay.
And I think he beat Jordan in the mini final or whatever. Like he had such a good performance, and even though swimming is not his strong suit, I would have expected him to make up a lot of ground on land portions,
Fair.
final or other portions. And I think he's like mentally checked. It's just not, I don't know. I think him to do better, even though it's a big final.
Yeah, fair enough. That's a good point. I'm gonna go in a bit of a different direction here. From seeing how focused this is on the water, and I just know that's not Kyland's strongest suit. I'm not gonna blame him as much, but for my loser male player of the week, I'm gonna go with Johnny here. I I mean, Johnny Bananas is one of the iconic competitors in the history of the challenge, and I'm watching this final going, is Johnny even here? They're not showing him at all because he's just absent from. I mean, one, Jordan is just making everybody look like they're not there. There's nothing you can do. But Johnny gave us nothing in a final. Whoever thought that would happen?
And I mean, not even is he like not winning, I guess, or whatever, but you also at the same time you have to think about Michelle is beating him, Jenny is beating him, all these girls are beating him. And another thing that we did briefly talk about, I think his strategy of trying to not tire himself out is not necessarily going to help him at the end because a checkpoint is winning a checkpoint. They are all worth the same points, whether or not they're physically challenging, they're counting or memory. And you have to go into the quality of try to win or as close to first on point because if you keep getting third or whatever, you're not even going to have a chance to win in it.
Right.
Um, for my female loser of the week, I had Rachel
Yeah.
because I think a lot of people, including myself, kind of expected her to be like a contender to win this final. Um, and she was never like a bad swimmer per se, that at least from what we saw earlier. And in the running portions and the like, I expected her kind of at the top of the pack, and she hasn't been. And I think because she's the sole member of Era One and the season that she had, the fight that she had to put in to get into the final, I was just expecting a little bit more from her.
Yeah, that's a good point. Um, I'm gonna go with everything that you just said for mine, except the name. And exactly what you just said was what I had written down about Tori. And I really think on the women's side, and we'll see what happens if either one of them can break back into it. But it looks like that this is a endurance slash like more physically built strength from Jenny versus a strength in the water and a strength with her mind from Michele. And I think the two of them are gonna go at each other round after round,
Yeah, and I will have to
which
agree
is
with that.
surprising because on both levels, Rachel and Tori, you would expect to 9 times out of 10, if you see Rachel or Tori in a final, you expect them to win. And neither one really seems to be turning up.
Well, I will say Tori has been in a lot of finals and she's only won one of them.
Yeah,
So I don't know. USA 2, we saw the axe kind of her over or whatever, but see her even at the beginning of the final, she was kind of towards the back of the pack. And I think Ride or Dies with her and Devin was obviously a different type of final. It came down to more eliminations than
yeah,
the physical aspects of a very long final, I guess. Um, but yeah, I agree. And I know a lot of people are going to say that, well, she had to do the elimination before. But again, like we talked about, everybody had to stay up.
yeah,
Yes, she's going to be more tired, but I don't like, I think she has done this long enough and done a lot of finals too, where I would expect her to still be a contender to win in this.
yeah, absolutely. All
Um,
right.
I was gonna say
Anything
I don't
else?
have anything else, no.
Okay, perfect. So that wraps up part one. They kind of left us hanging in the middle of the cast singing, but we will be back for part two, and we should have a winner the next time we see you guys. And then we'll be back to talk about the reunion, and we have a preview coming up for All Stars 5.
Yeah, I'm really excited for All Stars 5. We did see I'm sure everybody has seen the cast reveal or at least
Yeah,
some of the names. We see cool people, but we also a handful of newer
yeah.
areas. So we'll have to see how that goes and how we'll see if they deserve to be on
It'll
an
be
All Star season.
controversial, but I don't mind it at all. Um, I guess I've only been in this community for like 4 years now, so it's a little different than most people. But I mean, with what they're doing and really reinvigorating rivals as a theme for All Stars, it's like I'd rather watch them do rivals and have the best cast than restrict themselves to who they can cast.
I don't mind it, but I do think that there were some interesting choices.
True.
Like Big T and Corey Lay, I
Yeah,
don't think maybe are sorry.
that's okay.
Where is that? Hang on. There we go. Yeah, I think those are some interesting choices for those. I mean, if it would have been other people, maybe
Yeah.
would be like I wouldn't mind people from BA or other seasons to be there, but I think it was a interesting choice based off
Well,
of
we'll get
the
into more of those details when we do that episode.
yes.
I wish it was coming out for now, but like I was telling you, I have to go back to work in a few minutes.
Oh gosh. Okay. Well, thank you everybody for listening. And we will see you with hopefully our winner next time.
Yep, perfect. Thanks for listening and have a great rest of your day. And we'll see you next time. Bye. Bueno.